Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our latest session of Incubeta Ignite. Today, we're going to be discussing GA4 and the future of measurement. I am Zoe Hall. I'm the Managing Director of Ad Tech and Measurement Solutions at Incubeta US. I'm thrilled to be hosting today's session and even more pleased to announce that we have a global presence on today's call. But before I introduce you to our three lovely ladies, our panelists who are sitting here with me now, there are a few housekeeping items we should tick off the list. First and foremost, this session will be recorded so that you can play it back or watch it again at a later date. The session itself will run for about 40 to 45 minutes. We're going to kick it off with a panel discussion. We'll open it up to an audience QA, and then we'll close out with a demo of GA4's new user interface. So without further ado, let me introduce you. Today, I am joined by Jade Arenstein, our Head of Data Strategy and Analytics from our South Africa office. Say hi, Jade.
Hi.
Hi, Jade.
Today. Thanks, Zoe.
Pleasure. Thanks for joining us. Next up, we have Jessica Jacobs, our Director of Strategy for the EU.
Hi.
Hi, Jessica. And last but not least, we have Monika, our UK Analytics Manager.
Hi, Zoe. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Monika. Thanks for joining us. So before we dive into what exactly is GA4, why does it exist, what enhancements does it bring to the table, and most importantly, why is this latest iteration of one of the most widely used analytics platforms something that should be on your radar and in your account, I just want to level set with our audience because GA has changed quite a bit since its original inception. So in 2005, Google purchased a product called Urchin Analytics, which would become the classic version of analytics. Then in 2013, Google would roll out Universal Analytics, or UA, which is the platform that we all know, love, and have come to rely on. In 2016, they would acquire Firebase, which they would later rebrand to Google Analytics for Firebase, the back end of which and the event-based tracking, which would inform a lot of the changes that we see reflected in today's iteration. Cut to October 2020, and you have the launch of GA4. So GA4 has surfaced by and large in response to changing industry and consumer behaviors, predominantly with respect to the exponential increase in data, customer fragmentation, touch points along the customer journey, and the increased privacy mandates that are coming from legal, corporate, and consumers alike. So without further ado, let's dive in and discuss what exactly is GA4 and what can we expect to achieve with this new interface. So Jessica, to kick us off, the number one question that I get asked by clients when I bring up GA4 is, how is it going to be a game changer for my organization? Can you touch on some of the high level points of what GA4 brings to the table?
Absolutely, Zoe. So I think GA4 will be a game changer for many reasons. Firstly, it uses a data model which will allow combining of web and app interactions, which is usually beneficial for those businesses or organizations that are highly dependent on app traffic. Secondly, GA4 already has features which UA does not have, and this gap is going to increase year on year. Finally, machine learning algorithms which are tailored out in the GA4 will improve the level of analysis available, like calculating churn probability, something that so far required a separate development track, and feeding that information back into GA. In addition to also mention, GA4 also makes enterprise level features accessible to everyone, thanks to the free BigQuery connector, which will be coming up. So which means there is no sampling of data and of course means that you can do a lot more analysis. It certainly does not yet rival the GA360 features as it stands, but if you have struggled with sampling data in the past and have used overcomplicated pipelines to actually download data out of GA4 will actually help solve those issues.
Perfect. And Monika, I touched on it a bit in the introduction, but can you explain how GA4 can operate within and ostensibly help to mitigate some of the impact of a cookieless future and the privacy centricity we're experiencing right now?
Thank you, Zoe. This is a very timely question. So the loss of third-party cookies on Chrome is a big news, but let's not forget that there are already significant restrictions on browsers like Firefox, Safari, and others as well. These restrictions are already affecting the data collected in all tools. With imminent removal of third-party cookies, we all need to be increasingly aware of the nuances of browser operations and how that affects the data in our tools, the data on which, at the end of the day, we all rely on, because this is what we base our business decisions on. This is why the right technology partner, as well as the choice of the tool, is crucial to help navigate this landscape. Now, back to GA4 and cookies. In my opinion, GA4 will have the advantage in two main areas. First is the modeling, which Google is planning to roll out. And second is the ease with which first-party data can be uploaded into the tool. As we know, as third-party cookies disappear, first-party data will be increasingly important. So this is a really, really crucial feature. Now, it's also important to mention that both Google Analytics 4 and Universal Analytics can be used while respecting privacy and regulatory requirements. I've seen GA4 being called a privacy solution, which it is not. Both Universal Analytics and GA4 can be used safely within privacy regulations. That being said, the advantage of GA4 is that all of the new features aimed at mitigating the impact of browser restrictions will be launching there, as it is the new generation of Google's product. This in particular refers to the modeling to fill in the gaps where the data may be incomplete due to lack of user consent. So, as I mentioned, the first-party data upload and modeling features will make GA4 increasingly relevant within this constantly changing regulatory landscape. The modeling in particular, in my opinion, will allow for holistic channel analysis, which in turn will add another view on the available information, aiming to help businesses make better decisions.
Perfect. Jade, if I can pass the metaphorical mic to you here. So when I think about the differences between GA4 and UA, there are four main things that come up for me. We've touched a bit on some of the GA360 features that exist. We haven't really discussed data ingestion. So would you mind taking on those two? And then Jess, if you could follow up with the enhancements to ML and AI in the platform and the introduction of DDA. Thank you, if Jade's answer goes on.
Sure. So in terms of data ingestion, it's probably the most different feature in GA4 compared to GA Universal. So in previous versions of GA Universal, everything was sessions, users, and page view based, which basically means that all the metrics were around the users, the sessions they had, and then the page views they had within their sessions. So basically, this complexity really meant that it was quite hard to mix and match scopes. So we call page view, session, and user different types of scopes. And you couldn't match a user scope with a page view scope, which made analysis quite strict and hard within GA Universal. So with GA4, basically what has happened is that everything is now event-based. So you'll still get your page view events and you can still get session start events, but essentially everything falls in line with events, which really makes it a lot more flexible in terms of analysis, but even more so in terms of implementation. So you can really implement pretty much anything within GA4 and customize it fully towards your business. So this has really been, for me, one of my favorite differences, but it's also, yeah, more than anything, actually, really, it has helped with sampling. So I think everyone knows about dreaded sampling, especially the GA free users, where you sampled when you hit 500,000 sessions in a property. So basically with GA4, because the data is so much simpler to ingest and Google can do it so much quicker, sampling only starts at 10 million events in a query, which really means that it's not going to happen for most users. So that's absolutely fantastic. And then in terms of the GA360 features, so Jess touched on this a little bit earlier, but there's so many GA360 features that are now available in GA4. So these include the DV360 and SA360 integration that are coming up pretty soon. So for those people that are already using GA4, keep your eyes open for that. And then GA4 is already integrated with BigQuery and Firebase. So the event-based system comes from Firebase. And essentially, because of that, Firebase is natively integrated into GA4. So with the GMP integration, it's definitely something that was completely missing out of GA Universal. A lot of our clients are on the GMP platform, but either aren't in a position to pay for the expensive version of GA360, and depending on the market, the price varies. So definitely for most users globally, this is going to be a big, big advantage and really enhance the level of data in GA4. So I'm really excited for that. And then it's also going to allow us to push audiences as well from GA4 to GA3 to DV360 and SA360. So it's really going to be a big boost. And then another great feature from GA360 that not everyone will be familiar with, but we'll go through it in our demo, is the Analysis Hub. So this is basically a feature from GA360, which allows you to slice and dice data as a data analyst would. And it is definitely my favorite. And I've said I have many favorites. I absolutely love GA4, but I think in terms of what GA4 can do, this is probably one of the most powerful, especially for analysts and clients that are really looking to up the insights from their data.
Agreed, it's certainly mine. So Jess, can you now touch on ML, AI, and DDA?
Absolutely. So focusing on machine learning and AI first, it is another exciting addition that's going to be coming in GA4. These essentially allow for predictive metrics and audiences, as well as really great machine learning driven insights across our reporting, which of course is something that we've not really had too much capabilities to actually enhance on. So that being part of the GA4 features, I think will excite most organizations. The predictive metrics includes purchase probability, churn probability, as well as revenue predictions, which are all incredible additions, especially for our retail clients, as we will now have the ability to generate audiences of these users and actually re-engage in the correct way, either through either driving through a purchase being predicted or or we can actually prevent the churn before it's too late. In terms of the AI capabilities, GA4 allows you to actually ask questions in plain and simple language and gives you the insights that you are looking for in a pretty impressive manner. This means that GA4 will be more user-friendly, so more users can actually start jumping on the GA4 train and making use of it in their marketing activation. Looking at DDA, so firstly, one of the most exciting upcoming changes is that GA4 will in fact also allow for the fact report across GA4, and will use DDA or data-driven attribution models, I should probably say. Currently in GA Universal, the only reporting option is a last click model, which has become an issue for advertisers where more sophisticated multi-channel strategies are being used. But this will only be rolled out in the coming months. This means that you don't have to actually step out of your analytics platform to do attribution modeling, but can in fact actually keep it in one uniform platform.
It's all very exciting. It seems like GA4 might actually do the whole buzzword of democratizing data. So based on everything that's been shared so far, it seems pretty obvious that even in this early stage of its release, it brings enhanced benefits to marketers, businesses, and analysts alike. Can each of you dive into what are some of your favorite use cases or applications of the aforementioned features so that our audience can understand how to really leverage GA4 for their business, for their analyst position, or as a marketer?
I'll start on that one. So personally, as an analyst, I really love the analysis feature. That's something that also Jade mentioned previously. Creating funnels is really easy, and data manipulation is far more intuitive than in universal analytics, at least in my opinion, even if it does take some getting used to. The troubleshooting is also fantastic. You can see the events on the screen coming live into GA4, which makes the frequently lengthy troubleshooting process much easier. There are also enhancements for analysts specifically, like the possibility of using Google Signals as a reporting identity rather than in just a few pre-built reports. So what that means is that there is a higher level of cross-device user identification and being able to use this freely across all of the reports, which is a fantastic feature as well. Those would be my favorites. Now I'll pass over to Jessica to go through hers.
Thanks, Monika. So already great points mentioned, and we are definitely seeing that there are significant benefits for GA4. And what I'll start off with saying is looking at the data import feature. This allows for uploading of first-party data, so whether it's from your CMS or your CRM system, and using it in your subsequent marketing campaigns, meaning that you now have the opportunity to make your marketing campaigns much more effective. Especially now that third-party cookies will get phased out, we believe that this feature will become increasingly more important. Secondly, the machine learning algorithms. So briefly touched on that already, which are and will continuously be rolled out in GA4. These models will help marketers understand ROI for their marketing budgets a lot more, which means additional information to help make better budget decisions in the future, which of course we know now is playing a key role in our current circumstances. But there are other models which are already in place, like the churn probability estimate. All of these features are giving marketers more information, which you can then use to make better business decisions or budget decisions. Additionally, let's not forget about GA's data transfer in BigQuery, which enables marketers and analysts to work directly with GA raw data and use it for analysis and audience building directly in Google Cloud.
Cool. I mean, I completely agree with both Monika and Jess on that and share pretty much the same favorites from an analyst point of view. But from an implementation perspective, I have to say that I've really enjoyed working with the events and parameter setup. So, I mean, so far, many implementations and I've actually lost count at this point. And the amount that I've been able to track with events and parameters has honestly been unlimited. There's been nothing that I've been unable to track at this point. So essentially, each event can have 25 parameters, and you can have up to 500 distinct events per data stream. So if you do the maths, like it is a decent amount of events and parameters that you can have across your account, which kind of goes back to that flexibility that I was speaking back to earlier. And if you take it and compare it to the event category action label that we're used to seeing from Universal Analytics, I mean, it's completely miles apart. And I've really, really enjoyed being able to give my clients exactly what they've been wanting for years and pretty easily as well. So that's been super cool for me.
Perfect. Decent sounds like understatement of the century when you do that math. So Jessica, given all that we've shared, I would find it hard to believe that anybody would drag their heels in standing up GA4. Can you talk to our audience a bit about what will happen to their current and historical data when UA is sunset? And what is your recommendation for how and when people should proceed with GA4?
Absolutely. So at the moment, there's no real indication of when the Universal Analytics property will be deprecated. But what we do know is that in the future, we will not be able to create new Universal app properties, but you will still be able to create new web properties. Our recommendation is to start with GA4 as soon as possible and to have a so-called dual setup in place. And what I mean by this is to have a GA4 property running alongside your existing UA property. GA4 will have no impact on your existing GA property, which I think is also a question that everyone is asking. It will simply just allow you to actually start collecting data in GA4 and build up that historical data. Means that in the future, it makes it a lot easier to generate valuable reports by having tracked all of that data already. Then to briefly mention the steps that organizations can take, at least that's what we are recommending, is to start by creating that GA4 property and placing that tag on your site. Then look at revisiting your measurement plans and start mapping out all of your events, custom dimensions, and goals to the data model of GA4. This is necessary because GA4 brings a new way of collecting events and custom values. So it is an additional incentive, I would say, to almost reinvestigate your tracking and KPIs and assess if your current setup is actually answering your measurement and BI questions. So in short, I would definitely say the sooner the better. Take advantage of having an early adopter status and prepare your team for this impending migration.
Okay, so that's very clear. It doesn't seem like there's much contraindication or downside there, mostly just upside. I'm going to pivot off of our questions. As we've been chatting, a ton of questions have come through the chat from our audience members. So by and large, the one that has come in the most is about GA4 Enterprise. Namely, will there be one, much like with GA360, and what can we share in terms of when it will roll out and what enhancements or key differentiators will there be between the standard and the enterprise version?
Yeah, I'll answer that one. So GA4 Enterprise is definitely coming. And Google has promised that everything in GA4 Enterprise will be bigger and better and definitely worth the investment for larger companies. Enterprise clients can expect, for example, improved performance, service level agreements, higher product limits, advanced security features, and more customized access management. That's among others. So more official news from Google will come in the following months, we are sure. When the enterprise version launches, we will definitely run another webinar as well to discuss the new features that will be on offer. And so stay tuned for that.
Perfect. Everyone will have to join us again. We have a couple of very savvy audience members who picked up on some audience segmentation and activation capabilities that are new within GA4. Jade, can you touch a bit more on what will be possible with respect to audience segmentation and activation?
Perfect. So, I mean, that's a really good question, and I think it's a really important feature of GA4. So I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I'll go into more detail on that. So GA4's audience builder is actually a lot more complex than the audience builder that we know in Universal. One thing that I'll point out in the demo is that it actually now sits on the front end of GA. So it's actually been completely pushed to the forefront. So GA4 is really about privacy. It's about cross-device tracking. It's about all of that, but it is also really about your audiences and your data and harnessing that to the best of your ability. So with GA4, now that it's integrated into GMP and DV360 and Campaign Manager and SA360 all linked, essentially what you're going to be able to do is build your first-party audiences and send them there. So that's really going to be a great feature, and it will be all event-based. So because of all of the event-based tracking that you're now able to implement, the quality and the quantity of audiences that you're going to be able to capture through GA4 is also going to be completely enhanced. So definitely get your hands onto a demo version of Google Analytics. You can get that through the support links and start playing around and seeing what the audience capabilities are, because it is very, very cool.
Very cool indeed. And Jessica, we have some questions coming in. So we've touched on the event-based structure and how different that is, and that's predominantly one of the main shifts. There are questions about, can we give a recommendation for a framework to build upon, what's included out of the box, etc. Can you shed some light for our audience on how to set up their event-based tracking?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I should probably start off by saying that this is quite dependent on a client-by-client case. But it is definitely good to mention that GA4 does come with some out-of-the-box solutions that could cover most client requirements, as well as offering flexibility to customize your events collection further. Many of these events can be collected without adding any code, which I guess we can all agree is great, considering that development pipelines can sometimes be a bottleneck. These events are referred to as automatically collected events, which means, for example, things like tracking file downloads will now be quite easy to add in. Another good recommendation that we could probably make is that there is a lot of more advanced data collection for the more advanced data collection needs. Google has shared recommendations on what that event baseline must be by sector. And you can actually have a look at these. We've had a look at the retail and gaming sector specifically, and it's been built out quite well. These recommended events can be manually implemented, but of course you do need to follow the Google predefined names and parameters in order to set these up. For any additional events that you might be tracking for your client, you will still have the ability to actually set custom events where naming conventions can be defined by yourself.
Perfect. Okay, so I think in order to take this away from the theoretical and into the practical, let's move into the demo and let's close out on questions. For our audience members, anything that was not answered within either our panel discussion or within the Q&A, we will certainly follow up with you. So please don't worry, there will be no unanswered questions. But Jade, if I can kick it off to you, we'd love a little whistle-stop tour of GA4's new UI.
Perfect, thanks, Zoe. I'll start sharing my screen now. Thanks, everyone. And I'll meet you in the demo. For today's demo, I'll be taking you through 2 GA4 demo accounts from Google. The first one would be the demo account for a game that they have called Flood It. It is on web and app, but users predominantly use it on app, but it's a very good demonstration of seeing web and app together in the same place. And then I'm going to switch over to their merchandise store, which is Google's e-commerce store, where they have a GA4 e-commerce property set up, and that's a very good demonstration of how a good e-commerce account looks. One thing to note is that I do not have edit access to these properties, so I cannot demonstrate audience creation or event and conversion creation, but the details of this can definitely be found within Google support. To start off with the demo, I'll be taking you through the structure of the GA4 interface. So first you have your home and your real-time reports. Then you have your lifecycle reports, your user reports, your events, and an explore option, as well as configure. One thing to note at this point is that you'll see audiences and custom definitions that previously used to live on the back end of GA Universal. They have now both been moved to the front end. The home report gives you a snippet of each key report in GA4 and the option to either click out to a real-time version of the report or to the full report, where you can go get some more information on it. On the home screen, you'll also notice the Insights block, which gives you some valuable insights on all of your GA4 data to help both analysts and clients with getting deeper into the data and picking up trends. You can also ask GA4 questions at any point, as well as ask for insights. This can be done in plain and simple English. As an example, let's say we want to see users this week versus last week. We can ask GA this question. So we can say users this week, last week, and you can complete the sentence. And always remember at this point to click on the option with the insight symbol to get the insight. And you can see over here that users this week was 2,000 users, and this is 62% down from last week. And it will give you the date ranges that you are reporting with. Moving on to the real-time report. This report gives you a lot more insights than what we are used to getting from GA Universal. And this is simply because of the speed at which Google Analytics is able to ingest data because of the event-based structure. So in the real-time report, you can see a breakdown between devices, same users per minute, as you used to be able to see in GA Universal. You can see users by source, and you can further segment this into medium and campaign. One new feature is being able to view users by audiences. So all of the audiences that you create, you'll actually be able to see the users coming via those audiences in real time. Another thing to note in GA4 is that page titles have been pushed to the forefront, and this is to align with screen names that we used to get from apps. So in GA Universal, we're used to seeing page path. In GA4, it's very much about page title, and this is an important reason to get your SEO correct so that these reports populate properly. And then you also can see all of your events and the event counts in real time against all of them. And what's pretty cool is that there's an interactive Google map that you can actually interact with, and location data given on a city level as a default. In GA Universal, this was on the country level, and you could then dive down into the city. As the name says, the lifecycle report speaks to the full cycle of your users on your website and your app. It looks at all aspects of your journeys, from engagements with your pages and events, time spent on your app or site, money spent, and the value that they add to your business. Within each subsection of each category, there is an overview report, which basically allows you to get an overview of the detail that is in the reports that follow it, and then click out onto those reports to get more information. So let's say we want to view user acquisition. It will click out into the user acquisition reports. Just to note, the user acquisition reports focuses on new users, and the traffic acquisition focuses on all users. At this point, I want to highlight some of the new metrics that are available in GA4. So you can see you have engaged sessions, engagement rates, engaged sessions per user, average engagement time, and event count. So these are all, event count was previously in GA Universal, but not so much on the forefront, more on the back end through the custom reports. But the engaged sessions really is the GA4 equivalent of the bounce rate. So an engaged session is a session that's either longer than 10 seconds or where the user interacted with more than one event. You can toggle all of the reports over here, and you can select different dimensions to report against. And then you can also add in a secondary dimension to break down the reports even further. Your engagement reports look at your pages and screens, as well as your events that your users are interacting against. And you can see over here, a new metric is unique user scrolls, where you can see users scrolling down your pages. In terms of monetization, for this property where it is not e-commerce, I'll show you how the in-app purchases look, as well as publisher ads. So you can see the different product IDs and the quantity and the revenue driven against them, as well as this app has some AdSense on it, and you can see the revenue driven from that. Just switching over to the merchandise stores, we can see the e-commerce report. So this will be under monetization as well, and then e-commerce purchases. So the e-commerce reports have been rolled up into one report, which is a difference from UA. It is most likely that there'll be a funnel report that's going to follow. But for now, you can see that it is sitting in one report and products have been replaced by items. So you can see, break it down here by item name, but then you can also toggle between item category, and you can have up to 5 categories that can be built into your data layer as well for subcategories. Then you get item views, add to baskets, basket to view rate, e-commerce purchases and purchase to view rate, and item purchase quantity. So those are all very similar to what we're used to getting in Universal, but they are just called different things. Back to Floodit. So the retention report looks at all of your returning users, and it looks at user engagement by cohort, as well as your user's lifetime value. Moving on to the user report. So this tells you everything about your users. So it looks at their demographics, as well as the tech that they are using your website or your app from. So looking at an overview of the demographics, you can see that we are able to see users by country, users in real time by country, people by town and city. And you can also break this down into new users or returning users. And you can see users by the gender, interest, age, and language. So pretty much the same data that we're used to seeing in Universal, but it's just presented in a much cleaner way. Again, in the demographics detail, you can toggle between your different data and get a lot of metrics against that. In terms of tech, we can finally see app and web in one place. So you can see over here the breakdown between Android, iOS, and the website. This is an app game predominantly, so most of the traffic is sitting on an app. But you can see that there is 14.4% of the traffic coming from the websites. You can also see device category, and you can see resolution as well as browser and app version, which I will show you over here. So you can break it down and go into app version, and you can see that level of detail that you can actually view all of your data against each app version to see which app version is performing best. In terms of events and conversions, so conversions basically is the place where you can either set up a conversion and convert an event to a conversion. As I said, I don't have edit access, but if I did, you could basically just toggle this on and off to turn an event into a conversion. That is how easy it is. And then all of your events sit over here. And if you're wanting to get more information on your event, you can click into it to get that detail and to see your parameters. So you can see against the level complete, there is a currency parameter and all of these parameters as well. You view the level name and it will give you that. So this is basically diving into your events and your parameters. Audiences will sit over here. I would love to show you how to build audiences in GA4, but unfortunately do not have access. Over here is where you can view all of your audiences and the change in users against your audiences as well. Custom definitions is where you'll create your custom dimensions and your custom metrics, and all parameters can be easily converted into a custom metric or a custom dimension. And then last but not least, moving on to the analysis tool. This is my personal favorite. So the analysis tool is broken up into two sections, the analysis hub and the template gallery. First, for the analysis hub, just to show you what is available. So you get your exploration reports, which basically allows you to get a lot more detail on your users. Funnel analysis allows you to funnel pretty much anything within GA4. The path analysis gives you a lot more detail and is quite similar to the path analysis that is available in GA Universal. Your segment overlap allows you to overlap different audiences to see where there is an overlap in behavior and to get a little bit more information about how your users are behaving on your site across different segments. Cohort analysis gives you more information on your cohorts, as well as user lifetime gives you a lot more information about each of your users and the entire journey across your site. So let's look at the user exploration tool. So essentially the analysis hub's beauty sits in the fact that you can slice and dice data as a data scientist would, but using drags and drops. So over here in this analysis, we're looking at towns or cities and across devices and how many active users are against it. Let's say we wanted to not look at active users, but we wanted to look at all users. Basically go over here, you can add a metric of users, total users, apply, and then you can drop in your value over there and it will reconfigure the report for total users. You could also have total users against active users to see where there is a discrepancy and across which device, and you can see over here the results. Another great thing about these reports is that you can right click on them to either create an audience or a segment. If you create a segment, it will basically build the rule for you and you can select over here to build an audience. And then if I had edit access, I would say save and publish. And then to show you the funnel report as well. So the funnel report basically allows you to, as I say, funnel anything. So the default in this property is to look at first open, moving into organic visitors, people starting a session, viewing a page or a screen, and then purchasing. So over here, once again, you can segment by anything. So let's say we don't want to segment by device. We can remove device and we can put in gender. You can see if there is a difference between the two. So you can see the breakdown over here. And then once again, you can also create a segment of these users. So let's say we want to capture males that have completed a purchase. Or if we wanted to create an audiences of abandoners, we could right click over here and then create a segment of these users and also or create a segment from the abandoners. And you can also interact with this report over here where you can also create a segment. So over here, if you wanted to create a segment of abandoners, you can right click on abandoners and click that and create a segment of them to utilize either for reporting purposes or generate an audience for your campaigns. And then just to run through the template gallery. So looking at the template gallery, we can see all of the options that I spoke to you about earlier and took you through. And there's also set use cases that we can have as well. So let's look at the gaming one because this is a gaming site. There's a preset acquisition report where you can see which channels your users are coming from and where your active users are sitting, as well as your conversions and revenue against your channels. So you can see your revenue events and events that are driving revenue for you. Then you have your daily revenue, so revenue broken out on a daily basis. Daily trends. You can see trends by day over here. And how many hours a day users are actually engaging for. And there's a few more. So you can also see new user retention, first time user behavior, churning users behavior, and users by geo. So there's really a lot of great insight that is already offered in pre-built reports, but there's just so much that you can do with these analysis reports, and definitely recommend getting the demo and playing around with them for sure. Unfortunately, that is all that we have time for today. And I would love to show you some more, but if you have any questions specifically, please feel free to send them across and we will make sure to answer them for you. And back to you now, Zoe. Thanks, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you so much for giving us a glimpse into GA4's new UI and some of those key benefits that we touched on, Jade. As we're coming to the close of our session today, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank all of our speakers for their input and for all of the value that they've provided. As this was our first ever globally coordinated webinar, I'd also like to thank all of the Incubeta teams that worked behind the scenes to make this thing come to life. And finally, and most significantly, thank you to everybody who tuned in today. We hope you've come away with a bunch more information and understanding about GA4. In the follow-up email, we will certainly include our contact information. So please don't hesitate to reach out with any GA4 questions or needs. And as always, please continue to follow on as we continue to explore the future of measurement with Incubeta Ignite.